Coming to paperback and e-readers from SJS Direct. Isis, House of Isis. The goddess next door takes on a hustling Hotep high priestess in Harlem in this Afrocentric Isis series adventure. Pre-order Isis, House of Isis on Amazon.com today. For centuries, many believed that white supremacy was a so-called dominant ideology in the world, and people all over the world believed it more than Jesus and any other religion. However, when I take a critical look at the concept of white supremacy over the last 50 years from a historical perspective, it looks like white supremacy is in a state of decline. And the reason why white supremacy, I believe, is in a state of decline has to do with the compromises white supremacists made with the feminist movement back in the 1960s. Now, back in the 1960s, many white women were calling for equal rights and equal pay, and the second wave of feminists, I believe, started a chain reaction which is leading to the decline of white supremacy as we speak. And the reason why white supremacy, I believe, is in decline is due to the genetic makeup of what many call the beta male. Now, when it comes down to white supremacy, in its heyday, the white supremacist maintained control because he had a patriarchal order which maintained male authority over the West and even some parts of the East. And because there was a patriarchal order over white supremacy, what happened was many people learned to respect white male authority. However, in the 1960s in the West, many who were a part of the feminist movement demanded that women be granted equal power because they saw many in the civil rights movement asking for civil rights. And because they saw blacks asking for civil rights, they decided they wanted to get equal power. And because white supremacists wanted to try to maintain their control over things, they conceded and gave white women power. This was one of the most grave mistakes I believe white supremacy made, and it's one of the things that has led to the decline of the concept of white supremacy. And the reason why white supremacy, I believe, is in a state of decline is due to the social engineering of this beta male. Because when feminists gained power, what happened was they saw that the males were submitting to their power. And when they gave them power, they then went and had children, and those children then learned a gynocentric way of thinking. And that because they have learned a gynocentric way of thinking, instead of them seeing males as authority figures, especially white males as authority figures, they began to see white females as authority figures. And because they see white females as authority figures, they do not see men as having any power because all the people who they see as having power, such as their mothers, teachers, and the people who work in business these days, are all women. And because they see things from a gynocentric perspective, they no longer see white supremacy as the dominant. Instead, they see white feminists as the dominant. So instead of it being a patriarchal order of white supremacy, what we're seeing right now is a gynocentric state of feminism, which creates a female white supremacy. So instead of a patriarchal order of white supremacy, we now have a matriarchal order of white supremacy. And because we have a matriarchal order of white supremacy, instead of us having economic systems that go out here and build economies and allocate resources, we now have a consumer-based economy where people just keep grabbing for more and more resources and they go to consume instead of produce. And this has led to the decline of white supremacy because in this type of matriarchal system, we have socially engineered beta males. And instead of the beta male looking to go out and build like the people in a patriarchal order would, he is looking to serve female authority figures, submit to female authority figures, and defer to female authority figures, and he's looking to meet the emotional needs of white females and not looking to build wealth for the future generations of the next generations of white males and pass that wealth on to that next generation of white males. No, when you have a gynocentric and matriarchal order, everything is about the now and the short term and not about the later and the long term. And that's what's going to lead to the decline of white supremacy, because we see this transpiring right now when we take a look at all of these mass shootings. Because these mass shootings are a direct result of the social engineering of all these beta males. Because, again, a beta male is someone who is looking to submit and defer to women. He is someone looking for to get his emotional needs met, and he is someone who is not focused on the long term. And when it comes down to the mass shooter, he is not a long term thinker. He does not think critically about things. He does not think about the consequences. He only thinks about his feelings. And this decline of white supremacy, again, was caused because a group of white supremacists thought if they gave the white woman power, they would be able to continue breeding the next generation. Unfortunately, what they have bred is a beta male, an aberration that does not produce anything of value, cannot take a leadership role, and cannot take any sort of responsibility. This beta male is just like having another female around, and it's hard to build wealth with a beta male because he thinks and acts just like a female, and he submits and defers to people just like a female. It's hard to maintain an order of male authority when you have a group of baby boomers or older men who are getting older and dying out, and it's hard to maintain male authority when those men die out because these beta males, as we see right now, are giving more and more of their power to females. And we see this happening with things like this Me Too movement and this grab for power to establish a gynocentric state in places like America, and these submissive males looking to give power to others like they do in Canada and Sweden, where the males, instead of them taking a leadership role and establishing a standard for culture, a standard for economics, a standard for business, they're looking to try to integrate with people and submit to people instead of trying to establish an order of authority. Because you cannot maintain a culture or a country without an order of authority. And that order of authority was undermined way back, as I see it, in the 1960s, and may have possibly even been before that, because it could have led to the women getting the right to vote, which led to the early stages of the decline. But we're starting to see the later stages of it, because when we take a look at the declining state of white supremacy in the West, the declining state of white supremacy directly correlates with the feminist movement and the submit and the give the things that they gave to white women, and that is what I see was what led to the complete decline, as I see it, of white supremacy. You can't be supreme if you are submitting to others. If there is no male authority and no patriarchal order, it's hard to be supreme when you've given your power away to the woman. And as I look at it right now, what many call white supremacy, the white male is no longer dominant. It is the white female who is dominant, because when we look at who is a majority of the voters in America, the majority of voters in America are white women. 51% of the population is women. The people who control most of the jobs, 60% of them, are women. So we take a look at the concept and construct of white supremacy, and a lot of people still believe that it is a patriarchal order, and as I see it, it's not a patriarchal order. It became a matriarchal order, and because it has become a matriarchal order, this is why the whole concept of white supremacy is in a state of decline, and why the West is in a state of decline. Because if you don't have a patriarchal order and male authority, you are not going to be able to maintain a country, a culture, an economy, or maintain allocation of resources towards constructive things like infrastructure, business, and and making sure that the laws make sure that they protect people and protect property. Because if you don't have those structures, and those structures are all patriarchal, everything just falls completely apart. And when I take a look at this construct of white supremacy, it is going to go into a state of decline because beta males just can't maintain an order, because beta males just don't know how to be authoritative males or leader class males, because beta males have been socially engineered to submit to females. And when men submit to women, you get things like the black community, a community that winds up not in control of its own economy and not in control of its own resources. And the reason why that is because matriarchal orders are all about consuming and not producing. And when you have a matriarchal order, this is what does damage to a country, because matriarchies are about people in their feelings. And we see a lot of that in many of these American companies, where we have people talking about being happy and getting their emotional needs met and not focusing on their economic needs and the goals of an organization. When I take a look at this concept of white supremacy from a panoramic perspective, it is a religion, it is a belief system, but it's a belief system that is starting to have serious cracks in its facade, and people are starting to see through the lies of white supremacy, and they're starting to see that the white male is no longer dominant, and that because the white male is no longer dominant, they're seeing a way to take advantage of the female and take power and control over the West. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications like the Simp series, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.